Do I like second chance romances? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Alex, this is Pucksandpaperbacks, and today I'm bringing back Trope Taste Test. This is my series that I started, I believe, in 2022, so it's been a while, but we're finally back. It's February, love is in the air, and I want to find out if I like second chance romances. The whole purpose of this series is for me to explore tropes that I don't normally read. I know that I like fake dating, rivals to lovers, and academic rivals. That was my last episode, but I don't know what else I really like. So in this video, I'll be reading 3 books that have second chance romances to decide if I like the trope or not. This is just me exploring the tropes more to see if I like them. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. It really helps me out when you do so. And I will link the first episode down below where I explore academic rivals. What is a second chance romance? Book Riot has the definition for us. Second chance romances are the true high wire acts of the romance genre. By definition, they follow a relationship that dissolved at some point in the past, and new circumstances are giving that love another chance to blossom. Has the ground underneath the relationship undergone renewal and restoration, or are we talking about a scorched earth situation? Therein lies the tension. So what exactly counts as the second chance romance trope? Does a one-night stand in the past that comes back into a person's life count? To me, it can, if that one encounter truly had some weight to it. And I think some time needs to have passed. A one-night stand whom a character meets again soon after their fateful encounter is a continuation of a single relationship, if I'm asked to split hairs. Those I'd label one night to forever. Okay, I didn't know that that was a thing. What about childhood sweethearts or teenage lovers who come back together as adults? Again, people will differ with their opinions, but young people can deal with very real issues that may take until adulthood to sort out. What about childhood sweethearts or teenage lovers who come back together as adults? Again, people will differ with their opinions, but young people can deal with very real issues that may take until adulthood to sort out. So I'm willing to take those early relationships as seriously as the characters do. Where I draw the line are the books where people did not mutually understand themselves to be in a romantic relationship. For example, there may have been some romantic tension or one-sided feelings in the past, but there was never a relationship to break up. For me, those might be better categorized with terms like unrequited love or friends to lovers. Okay, so this makes a lot of sense to me. I recently read Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane, which was a second chance romance, and possibly the first second chance romance I've read, hence the reason for this whole series. I really liked that book. It was about childhood sweethearts who rekindle in adulthood, but just like they said, it did have where two characters have to learn things about themselves before they get into another relationship. So they had to have been in a relationship and then they meet again. This is the most realistic trope to me because I've known people who have maybe been in a relationship in high school and now as adults they rekindle and got married and things like that. So I'm excited to read the books in this video because I think I'm gonna like this trope. So now that we know what a second chance romance is, here are the books I'll be reading. First is When I Think of You by Maya Ariel. This is more of a Hollywood romance, and it was recommended by NPR. It says, something about me is that I am always picking up those Hollywood romances. This one follows the second chance romance of Kalia and Danny, who dated back in film school and are now working together years later. That proximity and the emotional nature of their work pushes them back together. It's a second chance romance that makes a good case for why the first time didn't work, and also instills hope for this time, which is what I need for the trope to work. Also, chemistry. This book also deals with grief in a big way, so take care of that if that's an issue for you. Y'all know I love grief in books, so. But how fun is that? Film school. So we kind of have some academic things going on here. Next was a recommendation on I believe my vlog where I read Here We Go Again, and this comment said, Second Chances in Newport Stephen is a second chance romance about a trans guy and his high school boyfriend. This is by TJ Alexander, and this author I'll be reading again this month for their new release. It's being sent to me. Yeah, this sounds really fun, and the cover's really cool. I don't really need to know much more than that. And the last book I'm really taking a chance on. This was recommended by someone I follow on Book Talk, Satoria Reads, and on Threads, she's been sharing this book a lot. On Threads, she says, when people ask me why I love second chance romance books so much, I'm just going to direct them to this book, Goaltender Interference by Ari Baron. I'm nervous, but on TikTok, she recommended it as well and says, it's an Achillean romance, just two sad guys too busy being each other's to find someone new. It sounds so good, but I am a huge hockey fan and I am scared. I really hope that this is good. I honestly was going to ask one of my hockey friends if they've read it because I have so much trouble reading hockey books because my brain just goes to the inaccuracies and then it pulls me out of the book. So I'm really hoping that this is good hockey writing, and if not, I just hope that I can move past that, but knowing me, I really don't think I can. So this is really going to be a test for me. So those are the 3 books I'll be reading in this video to see if I like second chance romances. Let's get started. Broken heart. Okay, so it's February 1st, and I have the audiobook of Second Chances in Newport Stephen, and holy shit, it's 11 hours, but we're gonna be fine. Let's read a little bit about it. A trans man returns to his Florida hometown for Christmas after his career goes up in flames, only to cross paths with his high school ex in this charming rom-com about family and second chances. Eli Ward hasn't been back to his suffocating hometown of Newport Stephen, Florida in ages. Post-transition and sober. Oh, I like that. He's a completely different person from the one who left years ago, but when a scandal threatens his career as a TV writer and comedian, he has no choice but to return home for the holidays. He can only hope he'll survive his boisterous, loving, but often misguided family and hide the fact that his dream of comedy success has become a nightmare. Just when he thinks his trip couldn't get any worse, Eli bumps into his high school ex, Nick Wu, who's somehow hotter than ever. Divorced and in his 40s, Nick's world revolves around his father, his daughter, and his job. But even a busy life can't keep him from being intrigued by the reappearance of Eli. Against the backdrop of one weird Floridian Christmas, the two must decide whether to leave the past in the past or move on together. Yo, this sounds so cool! I just read The In-Between Bookstore by Edward Underhill, which also has a character going back to their hometown and just realizing things about themselves. So this sounds really fun. I'm gonna pop on the audiobook, charge this camera, do some chores, and I will be back when I have an update. Hi, I've made it to at least 50% of Second Chances in Northport Stephen. Y'all, I'm so sorry. I swore that the title of this book was Northport Stephen, not Newport Stephen. And I realized that as I'm editing. Why does this always happen to me? Why do I always fuck up what the name is? I am so sorry. I'm gonna be calling it that this whole entire video because editing me just realized that's not what the fucking title is. I'm so sorry. Ugh. One day I will be a confident booktuber, and today is not that day. So I figured that I would give you an update while I'm waiting for my brookies to finish baking. It's a whole process, so I have some time before I do some dishes. I'm really enjoying this, but I think I'm just a sucker for trans romance stories, and this one in particular is talking about growing up in Florida and you're reconnecting with somebody you dated pre-transition. And I think that is so fun. It's such a great dynamic to have. I am just loving the romance here, especially because the characters are approaching 40. I love reading about trans elders and just older trans people and queer people in general. This is a dual perspective between Nick and Eli. Eli is a trans man, he's a TV writer and comedian, but he hasn't gotten any work, so he's back in Florida, his hometown, for the holidays, and he has to tell his parents that he basically doesn't have a job. When he goes to the grocery store to pick something up, he runs into Nick, his childhood best friend and lover. But the last time Nick saw Eli was when he was presenting as a girl. So far, this book does a great job of talking about trans issues, but not making this a book where somebody who is trans is going to feel uncomfortable. Personally, I am not feeling uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that a trans person couldn't, but I just think the transness is very light and it's not trauma. Like, he is talking about traumatic things that have happened to him, but it's in a light manner. And I need that at the moment. Yes, it's set in Florida, so it does talk about legislation that is happening there. And I think that this is just a great way to incorporate being trans, but not make that the whole book or the whole identity of Eli. Recently, there was a scene where Eli is back home and he just feels so uncomfortable because his childhood photos are there. He tells his parents that he doesn't like that, it makes him uncomfortable, and of course they aren't as receptive, and unfortunately they reply with a generic answer that many trans people have probably heard before, that, oh, it's childhood photos, they're memories. And Eli is pissed off because he's already dealing with a lot and he just wants to feel comfortable in some way. So his parents recognize this and his cousin sets up a photo shoot where they're gonna recreate those photos. That made me so happy. So there are a lot of euphoric moments in this book. That's what I want in a trans book. I've said this lately that I just don't want to read books about trauma. If I'm reading for escapism, I'm not going to pick up a trans book unless it's like this, where the character is finding joy. And I don't mind the mention of legislation because it's showing how Eli's being affected. That's not something that's going to bother me, but honestly, it could bother somebody else. Of course, I'm only one trans person and I'm a white trans man, so my experience is very different from other people. So I think this is doing a great job of balancing transness, the character having that identity, and being in Florida. It's very important to be mentioning legislation, and it makes sense that parents aren't going to be as receptive. Now, that doesn't mean that every Floridian parent who has a trans child, especially an older trans child, will act like this, but it's very common. We also learned that Eli came out in his 30s. Now, switching to Nick's POV, he is an Asian man who co-parents with his ex-wife. They have a 4-year-old daughter, Zoe. Zoe is so cute, and I also really like his ex-wife. They co-parent very well. However, there are some like family things with like mother-in-law and things like that. But I liked seeing Eli's perspective of bonding with Zoe, because he says, oh, since I'm approaching 30, I feel like the kid window has ended for me. I don't know if I'm going to have kids. And he talks a lot about not being able to see a future for himself, and a lot of trans people can relate to that. I just really like this book. I'm just happy to be reading a trans romance. Most of the trans romance I've read is YA, or I've read T for T romances, but I'm really enjoying this because it's a second chance romance. Nick is learning that he's demisexual because he feels a connection to Eli, but he's not sure why, because he's like, well, I'm not gay, am I? I'm not sure. And then his ex-wife proposes that he could be demisexual. So I'm interested to see his sexuality journey, and I just can't wait to read the rest of this. I'm obsessed with it, and I just like being able to read a trans romance with joy and a messy character who is like, I don't fucking know what's happening to me. And again, I really like reading older trans characters. This is just the perfect read for me at the moment. It doesn't have any trauma that is too heavy, and it has a lot of joy. So I'm interested to see how Nick and Eli continue and what the ending is going to be. Are we getting a happily ever after, a happy for now? And of course, you will get that update when the time comes. Hi, Hi, it's Super Bowl Sunday. Go Birds. I don't have too much time today to update, so I'm gonna do it right now, and I'll make this quick. I just finished up Second Chances in Northport Stephen by TJ Alexander, and I loved it. I just like this for so many reasons. First, I love seeing trans characters who are older. Our main character, Eli, he is approaching 40, as well as Nick. And I just thought that this was a really realistic romance. And I liked it because it has layers. One thing I've learned I like about second chance romances is the third act breakup is usually interpersonal, and it's not about the relationship. There's a lot that goes down, but I like that it's not about the relationship. Here We Go Again does this, and I just thought it was more realistic that way. And as somebody who likes to read character-driven books, I prefer that for the ending. The whole purpose of writing a book is at the beginning, the character feels some sort of way, and then they change throughout the book. And so I thought the ending was very satisfying. I really liked the epilogue, but I don't have too much to say about this. I just like that it was about two characters who are learning things about each other. I also really like to see Nick's development. I think it's super important to have questioning characters, especially to have somebody who is in their late 30s discovering their queerness. I think that's so important, especially because of the setting. This is set in Florida. It talks about some of the legislation there, but again, this was a very light book. It was just what I've needed at the moment, and again, getting to see this sort of representation is so important to me. The only time I've read a sexually explicit book featuring a trans character where it's a trans cis relationship, trans man and cis man, was To Touch the Light by E.M. Lindsay, which is one of my favorite novellas. So getting to see this representation again and sexually explicit scenes with a trans man is just so important to me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one and I highly recommend it. Now I'm gonna go get ready for the Super Bowl. Again, go Birds, and I will see you later for the next book.
They're picking up the pieces of all.
Hi, I'm 20% into When I Think of You, and I'm running into a problem. This is where I think second chance romances are going to hurt me, because I need to believe in the relationship. Because this trope is solely about somebody being in a relationship in the past and then revisiting this relationship in the present, I'm going to have a hard time believing in the new relationship, because I hope that these characters have changed. Like in the first book, Second Chances in Northport Stephen, I feel like that was more believable because the people have changed, both maturely and just in general. But here, I hate the love interest. I'm just not a fan of him. So far with our main character, she works as a receptionist at a production company. She went to film school at NYU with this guy Danny who she met. Their meet-cute was something where I think it's either she gets hit by a bike or he's on a bike, something like that, you know, very Hallmark romance movie-esque. They connect in school and they date. And now, I don't really know what happened to them in college, but present day, we learn that Danny is grieving the loss of his parents. His father died and he was battling MS, and so he's passionate about making a film about that. So Danny approaches our main character. I'm so sorry, I literally cannot remember what her name is right now. He proposes for her to be the assistant to him, the director's assistant, and she's so excited because she knows he's always wanted to make this film about his dad, who was very famous in Hollywood. So first of all, we have two different classes where Danny does not realize his privilege. It's just the way he talks so nonchalantly, versus our main character is like, no, like, you don't get it. So what has happened is she gets to work. She's so excited because she put in her letter of resignation, only to find out that the job is taken by a Nepo baby. and she's pissed off. And Danny is pretty much like, oh, like, you don't know what happened, like, I'm so sorry. Bro, cut the fucking shit. So now he's like, oh, I'll make it up to you. You can be like a PA or something. This girl literally quit her job and all for him. And he's just crawling back. So right now, the scene that I was at, this man is outside of her house. And he's like, I got your address from your roommate who gave it to him. Which I get why, because she's like, okay, be adults and like talk about this, please. But I really hope that Danny is going to be somebody that I end up enjoying, and maybe he's more complex and there's reasons to why he does things. But man, he's making it hard. Ooh, he's making it really hard. And this is where I'm like, do I believe in second chance romances if what happened in the past was horrible? Because if you did something horrible in the past, like I know people can change, but what if that person didn't change and is the same person? Because I'm sorry, if somebody did that to me and I like quit my job and shit, and then he was like, oopsie, I would never talk to him again, probably. So he better have a good explanation, and he better be fucking kissing her feet, because I am not happy with him. I'm not on his side, and I really think this is where second chance romance is going to be a problem for me. But this is every romance where I'm just like, should you two be together? So in this instance, the author is going to have to convince me very hard that Danny has changed and that they should try for a relationship again. Kalia is still head over heels for this guy, even though he's doing some horrible things to her. So I'm interested to learn more about their past relationship, because in college it seemed like they had a really good time together, and I cannot remember what the falling out was. I don't know if we're told why the breakup happened. Honestly, I think that it might have just been mutual, where like they were going different ways. However, now they're both in LA, so I guess that's how they're finding each other again. But it's complicated because she really hates him, but then on the other hand, she will go and do anything for him, and I totally understand that. But again, I'm really gonna need to be convinced to why he should be the perfect match and why they're perfect together. But so far, I'm liking it. I needed the writing to grow on me a little bit because I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I'm getting into it more. I just sometimes like straightforward writing, especially if it's in romance, but I have highlighted a bunch of things, so I'm liking the quotes that are coming out of here and some of the passages, but there are some instances where I just kind of want to get to the point. I don't really need everything to be described for me, but so far, I'm enjoying it. I just like the concept of it being about film and Hollywood. I like to learn about that, and I like when those topics are in books. So I'm interested to see more about that. But Danny, you are on thin ice. Hello, it's Tuesday. The Eagles are Super Bowl champions. I still can't believe it. I am so excited for this week, for the parade and everything. This team deserves it so much. Of course, I'm wearing my A.J. Brown shirt. It's an A.J. Brown book club shirt. He was reading on the sidelines. He's one of my favorite players. He's just an awesome player and awesome person. He's an advocate for mental health, literacy, and he's the man. But I am reading When I Think About You, and I'm enjoying it now. I'm 38% in, and I usually don't update you until the 50% mark, but because my last update was kind of negative, I figured I'd let you know that's no longer the case. This is just really slow burn, and second chance romance is like that, but I'm still trying to find out why we don't like Danny. It's been 7 years since Kalia has seen him, and when she's working at her production company as a receptionist, he walks in and she's embarrassed because she wishes she were in his position. And now she is helping on his film, and she is giving a lot of great advice. The author went to NYU for film, so she is basing this off of her experiences, and you can totally tell. It's also just talking about being black in this industry, especially being a black man. Danny is biracial, his dad is white, and his mom is black. His dad died. He was a prolific figure in the entertainment industry. Danny decided that he would create a film about his parents living in Jim Crow South and being an interracial couple and just their love story. So he is actually getting a lot of pushback from this. The executives said, oh, you can totally do it. But now, as the filming is actually happening, he's getting a lot of pushback. I'm interested to see what happens here because Danny is still on eggshells with me, and I feel like Kalia, there are some points where she is swooning over him still. There are so many quotes that I've been highlighting because I feel like a lot of these are going to be relevant later. Yeah, here she says, I will not swoon over Danny being nice to a child. It's the literal bare minimum of human decency. And yet. So there are points where he's getting her back. She's really gravitating back to him, but he has a girlfriend. So again, I'm just curious how this is all gonna go. But it's so slow that I just haven't been in the mood to pick it up. It hasn't really grabbed my attention, and I want it to, because I want to know more about Danny. Because from the reviews that I've read, a lot of it is saying that the reasoning behind their breakup and her being distant with him is out of his control. And I think it comes with some privilege of who he is and his presence in the industry due to who his dad is. So a lot of it is just nepotism. I'm going to sit here and finish this because it's Tuesday and I would like this to go up on Thursday, but if not, you'll probably just see it on Friday because I still have the other book to read. So I'm gonna get back to reading and I'll see you later. Hi, I'm 50% into When I Think of You, and I am really not jiving with this book. I just think it's too slow for my liking. I think I'm spoiled from Second Chances in Northport Stephen because that one, the chemistry was pretty much instant, and this, it's just taking too long to get to the point. Like, I'm at 50%, and I'm just now kind of figuring out why they had some bad blood. But also, I feel like the author's not showing me enough. There was a scene when they went to a bar for a birthday party, and Danny was getting a little intimate with Kalia. But we don't know that until the next chapter when Kalia is mentioning that that happened. And I just want to see that for myself. I want to keep being brought to Danny and why Kalia fell for him. What are the best qualities of him? Why should I be convinced that these two are perfect to get back together? That's how I felt with Second Chances in Northport Stephen, because it was just the timing was wrong and these two characters were finding each other again and the circumstances were pretty perfect. But here, Danny is just very wishy-washy. He just shut out Kalia, and I'm learning that that's kind of what happened in their first breakup. But I just feel like the communication is not here. The chemistry is not here for me. In my last update, I was telling you, oh, this is really nice, and I'm liking how I get to see what Kalia sees in him. But then he fucks everything up. I just think this isn't well executed, which sucks. It's such a bummer because I was really looking forward to reading this. And I am 50% in, so hopefully something will change. Like, I don't think this is bad, and I don't think I'm gonna dislike it. It's just the execution is not doing it for me, and it's way too slow. I understand a second chance romance being slow. It has to be like that because you're building up to these people reconnecting and falling in love with each other again. And that's how second chance romances usually happen, you know? If you see somebody that you grew up with and maybe they were your childhood lover, it's going to take a little while for you to be reconnected with them because high school you or college you are a completely different person than adult you. And these characters are only 26, so it hasn't been too long. It says that it's been 7 years since they met each other. Danny was a senior when she was a freshman, I believe, is what the story is. And I really hope that the ending will solidify things for me and make me enjoy it. But at the moment, I'm just like, it doesn't feel like these two really need to get back together. And they're not doing anything for me to make me feel like he needs to be with her. I sometimes hate this about romance, is that I think about it a little bit too much. And as an adult, I'm usually like, maybe you two should just like work on yourselves and not be in a relationship. But maybe I'll be changed. Maybe something will happen to change my mind. I really hope so, because I really like the concept of this book and I wanted to like it. But this might not be a winner. But that's okay. That's why I do 3 books in this vlog, to see if I really like the trope. But as I do this concept of trying different tropes, it's more so if I can find a book that does the trope right, in my opinion. Like I said, the last book, Second Chances in Northport Stephen, that was perfect circumstances for me, because the characters have had enough time apart from each other that they're remembering why they liked each other and are remembering some childhood memories. But this is different because it was college. It wasn't like high school or middle school. So again, I'm really hoping something will change, but at the moment, I'm really not a fan of this one. And it sucks. I hate that I don't like it. But what am I going to do about it? Anyway, I'm going to get back to reading. Hopefully something will change, and I will see you in a bit. I am 74% in, and finally, they say, we need to talk about what happened 7 years ago. And I'm annoyed, because why is it taking 74% to talk about what happened? Like, I still don't know why they broke up. Why am I just finding out now? Why are we just talking about this? I'm so bummed about this book because the execution just sucks. I wish it would have been organized better. There were some reviews of people saying it should have Danny's POV. I totally agree. The last 2 second chance romances I read had dual POV, and I think it's really important to have that in a second chance romance, because you just get to see the perspective from each character, and especially Danny. I feel like if we saw his perspective, things would make more sense, but I'm interested to see what he says. Pretty much we're learning that since his dad died unexpectedly, he has been wanting to shield himself from any relationship or anything good, and that is very relatable and valid. But I wish it was just talked about a little bit more, because this whole book I'm like, why am I reading this? Give me a purpose to read this, because the man is treating you like shit, so I'm really not on board. And I accidentally read the last page because I was just trying to see how long this book is without acknowledgments and what happens at the epilogue. I'm just like, I hope you can convince me that I should enjoy what happens in the epilogue. I feel like this would be my last reading update before I talk about my final thoughts, but I figured that I would chime in because what do you mean I'm 74% in and you're just now telling me how they broke up? It's annoying. But I'm gonna get back to reading and I will see you later. Hi, I finished up When I Think of You last night. Let's chat. I think this author is good at writing romance. I would like to read more romance from her. I just think second chance romance didn't work here. Like I said as I was reading, I wish this would have been executed differently. I just think it was too slow for my liking. I liked the concept, I liked the characters, specifically the chemistry and relationship between Kalia and her roommate Nia, I think is how you pronounce that. And I really enjoyed all of the characters. I thought it was fun, but the romance just did not do it for me. I think this author can write romance. I liked the sexual scenes that she wrote, some of the flirtation was nice, and I liked getting to know through flashbacks about the college relationship between Kalia and Danny. However, as adults, we don't really know what happened. In my previous clips, I had said, why did it take 74% for me to find out why they actually broke up? And then the communication still wasn't there. There was just a lot of communication errors here, and I just wish the miscommunication would have been done a little bit differently. These characters have flaws when it comes to relationships and romance. Danny is afraid to be close to anybody because his father died, and he feels like he will never get romance that his parents had. And so he's constantly striving for that. And he knows that he has it with Kalia, but he just keeps putting a wall up, which I think is very relatable. Also, these characters are 26, so again, makes sense. And then on the other hand, Kalia is a little similar, where she also shuts out anything good. And to me, I'm just like, are these two compatible? Because I'm all about opposites attract in my romances sometimes. Let's do therapy before we get into a relationship. And I don't want to spoil if anybody is planning to read this, because the ending did what I wanted it to do. I was thinking about how I didn't want this book to just be break up and make up. There is a third act breakup, which fucking pissed me off because it was just too quick. Like, they had just gotten back together with each other, and then she was like, oh, I can't do this. And I was like, what are you talking about? It just happened. Honestly, I never say this, but I think this could have been a little bit longer. I just think the pacing and execution could have been done differently. And like I said earlier, Danny's POV is so needed here, because what if we have this third act breakup and we see Danny's like, no, I don't want to break up. What if we get his perspective where he's all upset? I think that works so much better here and in any second chance romance. Just from the ones that I've read, they have always used dual POV. So I like the author's writing, and I think she is good at writing romance. Second chance romance just did not work here, because I've seen in second chance romance that we get that spark pretty early, but then the character holds back. And we didn't get that. The whole entire time, she's kind of seeing Danny, but it's not romantically. And like, it makes sense at points, but there just wasn't enough for me to be convinced at the end that they are a perfect match together. However, I would like to read more from her. I saw that she has a 2025 release coming up. Here is the cover. So I'm interested to see how that goes. I'm so disappointed that this was not for me. Of course, I'll link down below some reviews from Black reviewers. Mina Reeds just reviewed it, and I was so happy because I hadn't seen anybody really reviewing this that I trusted, and I go to her for romance recs, and she had some similar thoughts to me, so that actually made me feel a little justified in my feelings, because overall on Goodreads, which I don't really use anymore, there was an overall likeness of the book and high praise, and I was just looking to see if anybody else had similar thoughts to me. Check my description if you want to hear from Black reviewers, as you should. And now onto the last book.
You get my heart in trouble.
Hi, I'm about to hop on to sprints with my patrons, and I want to tell you about the last book, Goaltender Interference by Ari Baran. This is by a non-binary author who is from Philadelphia, like me, and they are a Flyers fan, like me. This is perfect. This is my perfect book. I started some of it last night. I read 13 pages last night. This is an Achillean second chance romance between a goalie who just retired. He's 36. It says, will two struggling hockey players grab their second chance at love, or will it slide right through their grasp? Newly retired hockey star Aiden Campbell should be a man with no regrets. Instead, he's consumed by them. When he runs into his ex in New York City 10 years after they broke up, he'll have to confront his biggest regret of them all. Montreal hockey captain Matt Saffron never expected to see his old flame again. Now that he has, he can't forget what they had, no matter how badly Aiden hurt him. Which is why Matt finds himself on Aiden's doorstep late at night with only a deep want driving him. One passionate night has them hooked all over again. But great sex was never the problem. Life after hockey has left Aiden adrift. Watching Matt push himself through chronic injuries isn't helping. But this time around, they're determined to make this thing between them last. If only they can rebuild the trust they destroyed a decade ago. Giving their relationship a second chance might cut sharper than a blade, but it may also end up being their best play ever. The fact that this is written by a hockey fan gives me so much hope, and I'm already obsessed, and I've only read 13 pages. I feel like I'm gonna fly through this, and that would be great because I want to try and finish this up today. It's Wednesday. My video is supposed to go up tomorrow. But again, you're probably gonna see it Friday or Saturday. I have sprints in at least 10 minutes, so I'm going to do some things before then, and I will see you later when I have a reading update.
At night, aligns all the shady features in all our empty worlds. Behind the scene, they're picking up the pieces of all broken heart.
Hi, I just got off sprints. I am 7% into Goaltender interference. I am obsessed. I love the writing. This is very addictive. My only little complaint so far is the chapters are really long. Chapter 1 is at least 34 pages, and this is dual POV in third person. I like to read my dual POV chapter by chapter, and this is just divided into POVs, and I just don't really like that in my books. First of all, we know right off the bat what happened. We are following Matt and Aiden. Aiden is a retired goalie. He's mentoring Gabe, a young black goalie from Scarborough. Aiden's last name is Campbell, so of course I call him Soupy. And Gabe is just like, Soupy, are you okay? Soupy, Soupy. Oh my god. It's adorable. Then we meet Matt, who dated Aiden 10 years ago, and we find out that he proposed to him, and Aiden didn't reciprocate. That's why Matt's brother Miles is like, fuck this guy. I totally understand. But Matt sees him and is like, oh my god. And so they just had a little catching up to do, I guess I'll say. That's like the best non-explicit way I can say that they were intimate with each other. Honestly, I thought that that was really well done and well written. I'm also interested to see how the rest of this goes because Matt is in New York for a family vacation. He is the captain of the Montreal Royal, and the New York Liberty was Aiden's team. He won 2 cups with them. I really like fictional hockey teams being inserted into hockey books, and so far, I trust this. I always trust when a hockey fan writes a book, but not every hockey fan can write hockey well. Hockey is kind of hard to write, especially because there's just so many components to it, and you have to figure out the whole team and how are you going to write it to where people are going to understand it, especially people that don't know hockey. But as somebody who loves hockey, I am sat. I'm loving this. I can't wait to devour it.
One eternity later.
Y'all, I'm 71% in, and I am struggling. This is so slow, and it's more of like no plot, just vibes, and like, I like that, usually, but it's a second chance romance. And the second chance has happened, but like, they're not talking about it. It is so vague. I have at least 100 pages left and I'm just like bored. There's some points that I'm liking. For instance, there was just a scene where Aiden becomes a wag, which means wives and girlfriends, and he gets to sit with the wives and girlfriends, and it's so funny. I also like that it's talking about therapy and depression. There's no conflict. It's just Aiden is staying with Matt, and it's been that the whole entire book. We literally just keep seeing scenes of what Aiden's doing while Matt is playing hockey and on the road and things like that. It's just him like baking bread and doing things to distract himself, like working out and things like that. And then they have sex, and then they go to sleep, and then they do the same thing over again. And then maybe something happens where, like, oh, he meets the teammates, or we get to see Matt struggling through coming out and things like that. Aiden came out in an article and Matt is dealing with the repercussions of that. Like, he's fine with it, but there was a scene where he's called the F slur, and so it talks about how hockey culture is and how it's not inclusive, but this is fictional. Like, it's NHL, but not, because they're not the same team names, which obviously for fictional purposes you have to change the names, but I'm just not liking this. The hockey is great, and I personally would like to just read more about the hockey. I'm like, okay, well, just play hockey and let me read that instead and see him like interacting with his teammates. Also, I still don't know what position Matt plays. He took a face-off, but like any forward can take a face-off, so he plays forward, but I literally cannot figure out through context clues what his role is. I have a feeling he might be a center, but I literally could not tell you. But I'm liking the hockey part. Like, clearly a fan has written this and knows what they're talking about. And I would actually read from this author again. I literally downloaded from Libby one of their other books because this is actually the last book in the series. But I'm fucking bored. There's really no big conflict, and usually I'm fine with that in romance. But it's a second chance romance. I'm watching the four nations face off, and Finland just scored. So, I'm actually having way more fun watching Finland versus Sweden than reading this fucking book. I am so bored, and I'm mad. It's just, there's nothing happening. Like, where's the conflict? When are you gonna talk about him literally rejecting you? The whole reason they broke up 10 years ago is Matt proposed to Aiden. Aiden wasn't ready, and he said no, and then they went on with their lives, and now they saw each other 10 years later, and it's like no time has passed. They fucked, and then now Aiden has been living with Matt for like 3 months. And they fucking haven't talked about anything. I'm so confused. And like, I know hockey players, so I know that sometimes they're not as intelligent. So I totally understand. But I'm reading a second chance romance, and I just want conflict. Second Chances in Newport Stephen was the best second chance romance written that I've read in this vlog. I'm just so bored of this book, and it sucks because I was excited for it, and I like the characters, and I like what's happening sometimes. I'm conflicted on if I even like second chance romances now. I feel like the books I picked didn't really help me. So, do I like second chance romances? I couldn't even tell you. There are things I like. It's talking about retirement and injuries. Being older, they're 36 and 37, and in hockey, that's pretty old. They're just talking about actual problems in the NHL and things that players face. Aiden doesn't know what to do after retirement. He's in therapy and trying to learn new things he can do now that he's retired, and he doesn't really want to go into hockey because it's just going to make him miss it more. So I'm hoping that we get something where he becomes a goalie coach or something like that. But instead, it's just him like doing the same thing every day, and I totally understand that. But when I'm reading a book, that shit is boring. Especially that this book is 358 pages. It feels like some scenes could have been cut. And again, where is the conflict and problem solving? Matt, on the other hand, is dealing with a knee injury. It's a chronic knee injury, and he talks about being older and free agency and how he's nervous about getting traded because he's been with the Montreal Royal for so long, and he just doesn't want things to change. He also doesn't want to retire. So I think these are real issues that hockey players deal with, and I'm glad it's being discussed. I like that stuff. I like getting to talk more about hockey injuries and the actual mental side of being an athlete, but please just give me something to make me excited about this book. I'm also enjoying the writing. I like the way hockey is being written because we're actually not seeing physical games sometimes. We're just learning what happened after the game, and I kind of prefer that sometimes. But it is fun to have an actual game. I just think it's being written really well, and that's exciting to me, and you can obviously tell that this person knows hockey. They have watched it, they know the little ins and outs of hockey, especially WAGs, that's really popular, the terms that they're using. I'm gonna try and finish this, and I know I could just DNF it, but I'm just curious if there is actually going to be some sort of conflict and ending. The great thing about this video concept is I'm learning what I like and don't like in second chance romances. Clearly I like when it's more conflict driven, characters are communicating, but I feel like that's every romance for me. So I think that I like second chance romances, but it has to be specific. It can't just be, oh, it's been 10 years, we're back together, and then they're just living their lives. And I know that this is because the characters don't want to talk about it, but like, it's 70% in, and you still haven't talked about it. Now, some people might like these kind of second chance romances. Clearly that's why Satoria recommended it, so I don't want this to be a snight on her or anything. I love her personally. This just wasn't it for me, but I would recommend it to hockey fans. But please, the sexual scenes are very graphic and kinky. Specifically, there's an unnegotiated kink, so just trigger warning for that if you don't like that. But yeah, this is just fine. I'm gonna try and finish it, and I will see you to wrap up this vlog finally, because it's been way too long and I am past my deadline that I set for myself. Okay, I'm gonna stop stalling, read, and I'll see you in a bit. Hi, I finished Goaltender Interference, so let's discuss. I was not a huge fan of this one. The second chance romance aspect just didn't do it for me. The communication especially really ticked me off. They barely talk to each other about this, and then towards the end, there's a third act breakup, and they still don't talk about the whole reason this is a second chance romance. Matt just easily forgives Aiden for what he did, and I just disagree with that. It just felt so off-putting, and I was so bored. They just kept not talking about it. And even there was a scene like 71% in where Matt acknowledges that they haven't talked about it because he's on the plane and he's like, you know what? I wonder what he told his parents. Yeah, I guess we never talked about that. And listen, I totally get hockey boy brain. I totally understand, but this is a second chance romance, and I would think you would talk about why, especially that the characters are 36 and 37. I know that doesn't always mean that they're gonna be mature and talk about things, but in a second chance romance, give me the communication. I will say I like that this talked about mental health, especially depression, as Aiden is going through a lot of depressive episodes, and it gets really bad towards the end, but I like that there were people there to support him. It also mentions the player assistance program, which the NHL has, so I thought that this was well done and well researched in the hockey aspect, and like I said before, I would pick up more of the author's work, but I just think this is not for me. It just didn't have enough plot and communication for me to fully enjoy it. However, I totally understand and respect the people that do like this. Now I'm conflicted because I have only had one successful book in this vlog. So do I actually like second chance romances? I don't know. What I do know is what I like in them, and that's clearly some communication. I still think Second Chances and Newport Stephen did it the best. I also like some interpersonal development, and obviously the characters talking about what didn't work in the past and how they're gonna fix things in the present. So I think I like the second chance romance trope if it's done well, but right this second, I don't know if I want to read another one. It could just be the books that I picked, or it's that this isn't the trope for me. I was discussing this with one of my bookish friends who mentioned there's a trope, right person, wrong time. So maybe if I do another episode of this, I could explore that. I'm not sure what the next episode will be. I'm gonna have to figure that out on my own, but I'm leaving you with a maybe. I think I like second chance romances. Maybe I need to do a part 2 of this because I don't know. I know I have some that I like, but these ones really put me off on second chance romances. The good thing is at least I know what I don't like so I can avoid that. But on the other hand, I'm glad that I have some that I've enjoyed, and I just don't care to read this trope anymore. I might just be feeling like that in the moment. That's gonna be it for me and this reading vlog. Thanks for tuning in and clicking on this video. I really appreciate it, especially for staying till the end because this is a long one. If you like the video, giving it a like and a comment really helps me out. If you don't feel like leaving a lengthy comment, you can just leave a heart emoji so I know you stayed. If you would like to support me further, I have a Patreon. Thank you to my top patrons for their continuous support, and if you would like to become a patron, the link is down below. If you like this video and you want to watch more, I'll link a reading vlog here and you can subscribe there. I hope you're all taking care of yourself and I hope to see you in my next video very soon.